Welcome to Good Talk English Podcast.
What if the ultimate secret to surviving, the most intense spiritual day of the year isn't some grueling 24-hour checklist of prayers, but simply, locking yourself down?
Right, because we usually expect preparations for these major milestones to be all about addition,
Yeah.
right? Like more effort, more tasks, more visible output.
Exactly. But today we're looking at a translated blueprint for the day of Arafah that flips that entire doing more framework completely on its head.
It really does. It's totally counterintuitive.
Yeah, so welcome to the deep dive. Today we are exploring a translated excerpt from a YouTube video by the scholar Omar Abdelkafai, and it's titled, How Do I Spend the Day of Arafah?
And just to set the stage, our mission today is to really extract Abdelkafai's practical step-by-step blueprint for observing Arafah, specifically for you if you're a non-pilgrim. So for the listener who isn't actually physically at Hajj.
Right. And the thing that completely caught me off guard in this text is the foundational advice. I mean, you would expect this massive list of complex, all-consuming rituals, but instead, the absolute core requirement is incredibly simple in theory, but agonizingly difficult in practice.
Oh, absolutely.
It's entirely about what you should not do. It's
Yeah.
basically a masterclass in the power of subtraction.
Yeah, that subtraction really is the defining feature of Abdelkafai's approach here. I mean, we so often equate significance with a really high volume of visible effort.
Right. Busyness equals goodness.
Exactly. But here, the foundational requirement for Arafah isn't an action you initiate. It's an action you actively withhold.
Okay, let's unpack this because it's like trying to fill a bucket with water. Before you turn on the hose, you have to patch the holes first.
That's a perfect analogy. You have to patch the holes because the text establishes that the absolute best deed you can perform on this day, the literal prerequisite for everything else, is the complete cessation of disobedience.
Cessation of disobedience.
Yeah, it demands this physical anatomy of restraint. You have to actively restrain your limbs and your senses.
Okay, but I want to push back on that a little bit just because, doing nothing sounds too easy.
It does sound easy on paper.
Right, like if someone tells me I don't have to add anything to my calendar today, my first thought is, great, I can handle that, I'll just chill.
But it's not chilling at all. When you look at how Abdelkafai maps out this anatomy of restraint, it becomes clear pretty fast that not acting is actually exhausting.
How so?
Well, he pinpoints the specific physical vulnerabilities where we, leak spiritual focus. And he starts by demanding an absolute lockdown of the tongue.
Wow, okay, the tongue.
Yeah, the tongue is treated as the primary source of spiritual hemorrhage. He insists it must be actively restrained from backbiting, gossip, lying, false oaths, perjury.
All of the heavy hitters.
Right. And he specifically emphasizes that you must withhold your tongue from speaking ill of any Muslim.
Which, if you think about the mechanics of our daily lives, that is a monumental undertaking.
It really is.
Because gossip and complaining are essentially the social glue of the modern workplace.
Right.
And, the currency of our digital lives.
Oh, totally. Think about how many times a day you might casually complain about a coworker or, jump into some heated debate on your social media timeline.
Or even just agree with someone else's sarcastic comment just to be polite.
Exactly. Abdelkafai is saying that all of those seemingly minor interactions are critical breaches. You're leaking water from the bucket.
Okay, so the tongue is on lockdown. What's next?
Then he moves to the eyes, stating they must not look at forbidden things. And then the hands, which must not reach for anything suspicious or forbidden.
Right.
And finally, the feet cannot walk to places of sin. So it is a total head-to-toe quarantine from the negative aspects of the world.
But this brings up a logistics question for me, because if the goal is a complete quarantine, what happens if I just lock myself in a dark room?
Like a sensory deprivation tank.
Exactly. I sit in a chair, I don't speak, my eyes are closed, my hands are folded, my feet are still. I mean, if I'm acting like a literal statue, am I technically fulfilling this requirement? Because I feel like there has to be an active component to this physical restraint. Otherwise, a coma would be the highest state of spiritual observance.
Right. That is a vital distinction to make. Physical paralysis is definitely not the objective here.
Okay.
Abdelkafai clarifies the mechanism behind this lockdown. You are restraining the limbs so that your heart and your physical self are entirely focused on the creator.
So it's an active, conscious guarding.
Exactly. It's highly intentional.
So it's kind of the difference between A car that is turned off and parked in a garage, and a car that is idling at a red light with the driver, like hyper alert, waiting for the green.
Yes.
The engine is running, the intention is fully there, but the brakes are firmly applied. You are actively holding the machine back.
That is the perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The restraint requires energy. You're applying the brakes to the limbs, not to just detach from reality, but to proactively set the stage for everything else. You're clearing out the behavioral static.
So you can actually hear the signal.
So-
But restraining the limbs is really just treating the symptoms, isn't it? Because once you've quieted the tongue and stopped the feet, you're just left alone with whatever is driving those impulses in the first place.
Which is terrifying for most of us.
Yeah. And that brings us to the next phase of his blueprint. Once you've patched the physical holes, the focus shifts inward to the heart. But, and this is the crazy part, it paradoxically demands that you look outward toward the people you interact with.
Right. This is what we call the inner audit, and it is uncompromising. Abdelkafai insists on emptying the heart of what he terms diseases.
Diseases. Strong word.
Very strong. He lists arrogance, malice, rancor, and envy. So these aren't framed as just, minor character flaws. They are active infections that are blocking your spiritual capacity.
And he demands real-world action to cure them, right? It's not just a feeling.
No, it's very actionable. He calls for a sincere intention to return rights to their owners. And crucially, he explicitly mandates reconciling with people you've argued with over trivial matters.
Wow.
Yeah, he mentions arguments born of desires, tribalism, racism, or ethnicity. He's basically telling you to drop all of these socially constructed divisions.
And the emphasis on racism and tribalism is really striking there because it targets the very core of human ego, right? Like the desire to feel inherently superior to another group.
Exactly.
But this is the part of a framework that I honestly really struggled with at first.
How so?
Well, we're talking about Arafah. This is the peak day for a vertical, intense, direct connection with God. So why is a day meant for supreme divine connection so heavily bottlenecked by horizontal, earthly, interpersonal grudges?
Right. It feels a bit disconnected at first glance.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive that, like, a dispute I had with a neighbor or some underlying prejudice I hold about someone's background is the literal roadblock to a cosmic spiritual peak.
What's fascinating here is how he connects human humility to divine grace. To understand it, we have to look at the psychological mechanism Abdelkafai is outlining.
Okay, walk me through it.
He explains that the overarching goal of Arafah is to present yourself in the universe as one of the poorest servants. You have to be someone entirely and desperately in need of God's grace.
You have to cultivate a state of absolute vulnerability.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And logically, you cannot claim absolute vulnerability and poverty before the Creator while you are simultaneously harboring racial superiority, tribalism, or, arrogant grudges over your fellow human beings.
Oh, wow. See.
The two emotional states are mutually exclusive. Arrogance toward humans instantly negates humility toward God. You can't ask the divine for mercy while actively refusing to grant it to the person sitting next to you.
That makes so much sense. Holding on to racism or ethnic superiority inflates your ego at the exact mathematical moment you are supposed to be deflating it.
Exactly. And the expert text highlights a specific supplication from Abdelkafai to really lock in this mindset.
Let's hear it.
It translates to, O Allah, enrich us by our need of you, and do not make us poor by our independence from you.
Enrich us by our need of you. That prayer is wild because it flips our standard definition of wealth and poverty completely upside down.
It really is the linchpin of the whole inner audit.
I want to break that down because it runs entirely counter to the way you and I are conditioned to operate every day. We live in a culture that worships self-reliance.
Oh, definitely hustle culture.
Right, hustle culture, independence, being a self-made person, these are our modern virtues. We view need as a weakness. But this prayer argues that recognizing how desperately you need God is actually the source of true wealth.
And the second half of the prayer, do not make us poor by our independence from you, targets that exact modern illusion you just mentioned.
The illusion of being self-made.
Exactly. The belief that we are totally self-reliant, that we don't need divine intervention, is framed here as the ultimate form of spiritual poverty.
Because it's a delusion. You're financially rich or socially powerful, so you think you're independent, but you're actually spiritually bankrupt because you've cut off the actual source of provision.
Right. You're running on empty without realizing it.
So true wealth on Arafah requires admitting total poverty, which means letting go of the arrogance that makes you feel superior to others.
And once you achieve that state, once the limbs are restrained and the heart is empty of that arrogance, You are finally prepared for the actual event.
The main stage.
Yes. Abdelkafai frames Arafah not just as a day of prayer, but as a unique spiritual battlefield.
And the conditions of this battlefield are fascinating. He uses a very striking visual for the opposition here.
He does. He states that on this specific day, the devil is never seen smaller or more humiliated in the entire year.
Smaller and more humiliated. That's such a vivid image.
Right. The external negative influence is at its absolute weakest point. The spiritual atmosphere of Arafah uniquely suppresses it.
I think the best way to understand this is to imagine like a localized signal jammer.
Oh, I like that.
Like for 364 days a year, there is this massive external signal jammer scrambling your spiritual connection, constantly flooding your mind with distractions, doubts, and temptations.
Yep, the static.
But on Arafah, that jammer is essentially powered down. The devil is small and humiliated. The external static is gone. So what does this all mean? It sounds like you're playing a championship game, but the opposing team's defense has been benched.
It is the ultimate spiritual home field advantage.
Exactly.
But, it also reveals a really difficult truth. If the external signal jammer is turned off and you are still experiencing static,
Oh, no.
yeah, that static is coming from inside your own house.
Right. Without the devil to blame, you are face to face with yourself.
Exactly. And Abdelkafai says this is your prime opportunity to defeat your own lower self. He uses the specific terminology for this internal enemy, which is a nafs amara bilsus, which translates to the soul that commands to evil.
The soul that commands to evil. That sounds intense.
It's basically the base primitive level of the human ego, the part that constantly leans towards selfishness, instant gratification, and that defensive arrogance we talked about.
So if the goal is to defeat this lower self, this nafs amara bilsu, what happens after you beat it? Like, you don't just exist as an empty vessel, right? Abdelkafai outlines an upgrade path for the soul.
He does, yeah. The immediate goal is to elevate that lower self to the lawama, which is the self-reproaching soul.
The self-reproaching soul.
And this is a massive shift. The lawama is the soul that possesses an active conscience. It feels guilt, it recognizes its own shortcomings, and it corrects itself.
Okay, so it's the soul that catches you when you're about to gossip at the water cooler and says, wait, we aren't doing that today.
Yes, exactly. It is the internal auditor. And then the ultimate goal is to push even further, elevating the soul to the mutmainah.
And what's that?
This is the tranquil soul, a state of complete peace, filled with certainty, entirely reliant on God, and totally free from the anxiety of self-reliance.
So you're basically upgrading your internal operating system from one that drags you down to one that corrects you to one that is finally at peace.
Precisely. And the text emphasizes that when you do this, you are plugging into a massive global network. You might be thousands of miles away from Mecca, but by engaging in this specific internal battle, you achieve solidarity with the millions of pilgrims who are physically standing on the plains of Arafah.
That's a beautiful concept. Even if you aren't physically there, you share in their rights.
Abdelkafai is very clear on this point. By remembering God, reading the Quran, and shifting your reliance entirely onto the Creator, you are right there with them. The physical geography becomes secondary to the shared spiritual elevation. You are part of the exact same movement.
Okay, so this all sounds incredibly epic. We're talking about battling the base ego, capitalizing on a powered-down devil, achieving a tranquil soul, and connecting with millions of pilgrims in this global spiritual network.
It's massive.
But here is the elephant in the room. The massive tension in Abdelkafai's blueprint.
The Tuesday problem.
Yes, the Tuesday problem. The jarring reality check for the non-pilgrim is that this monumentally significant day might just fall on a regular Tuesday.
It is the ultimate collision of the cosmic and the mundane.
Right, because for those not at Hajj, there's no dramatic change in scenery. You wake up, you make your coffee, you pack your lunch, and you have to go to work.
You have to sit in traffic.
Yeah, you sit in traffic. How does a person actively fight the lower self and seek the tranquil soul when they are literally just sitting in a cubicle looking at an Excel spreadsheet? Or, like, dealing with a frustrated customer at a retail job? The disconnect between the spiritual peak and everyday reality feels almost insurmountable.
And Abdelkafai completely anticipates this disconnect. He doesn't argue that spirituality only exists in a vacuum or, isolated in a mosque.
Thank goodness.
Right. His framework is actually deeply pragmatic for the person navigating that Tuesday workday.
Right.
The primary tool he prescribes for bridging this gap is keeping your tongue moist for the remembrance of God, which is known as dhikr.
So even though you've locked down your tongue from gossip, you're keeping it active with remembrance.
Exactly. You replace the negative with the positive. And he provides specific terms for this dhikr that you can use quietly, internally, regardless of your physical location.
Let's look at the psychology of these terms because they aren't just random phrases, right? They are highly functional tools for surviving a workday. He highlights takbir.
Yes, takbir is the declaration that Allah is the greatest, along with tamid, which is praising Allah, and talil, declaring there is no God but Allah.
Think about the mechanism of takbir while you are staring at that stressful spreadsheet or listening to a boss complain. Declaring internally that God is the greatest actively resizes your earthly problems.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. It resizes that.
Yeah, it shrinks the spreadsheet, the deadline, the office politics down to their proper insignificant size because you are constantly running a background process in your mind that reminds you of something infinitely larger.
It acts as an anchor. Even if your hands are typing an email and your eyes are reviewing a document, your internal monologue is engaged in this quiet rhythm of remembrance. You are preventing the mundane reality from swallowing your spiritual awareness.
And Abdelghafai doesn't just ask you to mentally multitask, he actually tells you to aggressively claim the margins of your day.
Yes, the stolen moments. He advises that whenever you find even a brief moment of free time, like a lunch break, the 5 minutes between Zoom meetings, a quick walk to your car, you must step aside and actively utilize it.
Have to seize it.
Exactly. Use those margins to pray, to seek forgiveness, which is known as istighfar, and to ask from God's bounty.
So you aren't abandoning your worldly responsibilities, but you absolutely refuse to let them consume the spiritual opportunity of the day.
That's the balance.
And the specific prayers he recommends for these moments are really interesting because they are incredibly grounded.
Very grounded. They are drawn directly from the Quran and the prophetic tradition. He highly recommends asking for good in this world and the hereafter.
I love that inclusion. It doesn't tell you to become a monk or to stop caring about your career or your family. It validates your earthly life. It basically says, yes, ask for success and goodness here, but also secure your hereafter.
It's a holistic approach. He also recommends prayers, seeking protection from the fire, and asking for comprehensive well-being in both your religion and your daily affairs.
Wow.
And crucially, he circles back to the foundational theme of the inner audit. He urges a specific prayer, acknowledging that we have wronged ourselves and desperately need God's mercy.
We have wronged ourselves. That really ties the whole blueprint together, doesn't it?
It brings it full circle.
It brings you right back to taking responsibility for that internal static, acknowledging the damage done by the lower self, and leaning entirely on divine grace to fix it.
It scales perfectly. The same profound humility required to stand on the plains of Arafah is the exact same humility required to whisper a prayer of forgiveness in a break room on a Tuesday afternoon. The external environment changes, but the internal mechanism is identical.
So, if you are listening to this on your commute or at your desk or while doing the dishes, let's just map out the journey Abdelghafai has taken us on today.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. It does not start with exhausting, complex rituals. It starts with an absolute physical lockdown, applying the brakes to your tongue, your eyes, your hands, and your feet. You basically patch the holes in the bucket and stop the bleeding.
And then from that state of active restraint, you move into the rigorous inner audit. You actively root out the social diseases of arrogance, tribalism, and interpersonal grudges, because you understand the mechanism now. You cannot access divine grace while harboring human arrogance. You must embrace complete spiritual poverty.
Right. And once you've cleared that internal space, you take advantage of the fact that the external signal jammer is turned off. You face your own lower self, battling the ego to elevate your soul toward tranquility.
Upgrading the soul.
Upgrading it, yes. And you do all of this, connecting with a global network of pilgrims while navigating the mundane reality of a normal workday, using quiet remembrance to constantly resize your earthly problems. I mean, this isn't just a list of religious rules. It is a brilliant psychological masterclass in intentionality, mindfulness, and protecting your spiritual core amidst the absolute noise of modern life.
It is a profound framework. And, if we look at the entire blueprint, it actually leaves us with a rather unsettling final thought to consider.
Unsettling, let's hear it.
Well, think about it. The absolute foundational requirement, the entry ticket to connecting with the divine on the most important day of the year, is the complete, uncompromising physical restraint of your words, your gaze, and your actions.
The quarantine we talked about.
Exactly, the quarantine. So the question you really have to ask yourself is this. If that intense, exhausting level of active restraint is what is mathematically required to access grace on this one peak day.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah. How much of your spiritual life are you bleeding out? By letting your tongue, your eyes, and your thumbs wander mindlessly through the other 364 days of the year.